Luke 2. In those days, when the weight of an empire stretched across the land, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that everyone should be registered, and so people traveled from town to town, returning to their ancestral homes. And among them was a man named Joseph, who left Nazareth in Galilee and went up to Bethlehem in Judea, the city of David, because he belonged to that ancient line. And with him was Mary, pledged to be his wife, now carrying within her the mystery of a child conceived not by man, but by the Spirit of God. And while they were there, in that quiet, crowded town where no room could be found for them, the time came for Mary to give birth. And in the stillness of the night, far from comfort and without ceremony, she brought forth her firstborn son, wrapped him in cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no other place for them to stay. And so the King of all creation entered the world not in a palace, but among animals and straw, humility wrapped in humanity. That same night, out in the fields beyond the city, shepherds kept watch over their flocks, men forgotten by society but remembered by heaven. And suddenly the silence was broken by a radiance they had never seen before, for the glory of the Lord surrounded them, and an angel appeared with a voice that trembled the air, saying, "Do not be afraid, for I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people. Today, in the city of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord." And as the shepherds stood stunned beneath the stars, the sky opened wider still, and a multitude of heavenly beings praised God, saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." And when the angels returned to heaven and the night became quiet again, the shepherds hurried to Bethlehem. And there they found the child, just as they had been told, lying in a manger with Mary and Joseph nearby, and they shared what they had seen and heard, and all who listened were amazed. But Mary, gentle and still, treasured these things in her heart, pondering the weight and wonder of it all. And the shepherds returned to their fields, glorifying God for everything they had witnessed, their ordinary lives now forever changed. And 8 days later, the child was circumcised and given the name Jesus, the name spoken by the angel before he was conceived. And in time, they brought him to Jerusalem to be presented to the Lord, as was required by the law, offering the sacrifice of the humble, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. In the temple that day was a man named Simeon, righteous and devout, who had waited his whole life for the comfort of Israel. And the Spirit had promised him that he would not die before seeing the Lord's Messiah. And when he saw the child, he took him in his arms and praised God, saying, "Now, Lord, you may let your servant depart in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel." There was also Anna, a prophetess, aged and faithful, who worshipped night and day with fasting and prayer. And when she saw the child, she gave thanks to God and spoke of him to all who longed for redemption. And after fulfilling all that was required, Mary and Joseph returned with Jesus to Nazareth. And the child grew strong, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God rested upon him. John 7. As the Jewish festival of tabernacles approached, Jesus' own brothers, who still didn't believe in him, urged him to go to Judea and show his works publicly, almost taunting him with the idea that someone seeking recognition wouldn't stay hidden. But Jesus, knowing the timing of heaven differs from the urgency of man, told them, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world doesn't hate you, but it hates me because I testify that its ways are evil." So they went without him, and he remained in Galilee. But later, not openly, but quietly, he too went up to the festival. And as he walked among the crowds, the people whispered and wondered, some saying he was good, others accusing him of deception. Yet no one spoke openly, because fear hovered in the air. Midway through the feast, Jesus stood up in the temple courts and began to teach, and those who heard him were astonished, asking how he could know such things without formal learning. But Jesus said, "My teaching is not mine, but comes from the one who sent me. And anyone who truly desires to do God's will recognize whether what I say is from God or merely my own words." He exposed their hypocrisy, reminding them that they circumcise on the Sabbath, but are angry when he heals a man on that same day. And he urged them to judge not by appearances, but with right judgment. The people murmured, "Could this be the Messiah?" Yet they questioned how he could be, since they knew where he came from. But Jesus cried out, "You know me, and yet you do not really know the one who sent me. I come from him, and he is true." And though they tried to seize him, no one could lay a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. Many believed in him, saying, "When the Messiah comes, will he do more signs than this man?" And the Pharisees, hearing the whispers of faith, sent temple guards to arrest him. But Jesus said, "I am with you only a little longer, and then I go to the one who sent me. You will look for me, but not find me, and where I go, you cannot come." On the final and greatest day of the festival, Jesus stood and cried out with a voice that echoed beyond the courts, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." And by this he meant the Spirit, who would later be given to all who believed in him, after he was glorified. And the crowd was divided. Some said, "This is the prophet." Others declared, "This is the Messiah." But still others doubted, unable to reconcile their expectations with this man from Galilee. And arguments arose, and the guards returned to the Pharisees without arresting him, saying simply, "No one ever spoke the way this man does." Yet the religious leaders scoffed, blind to their own blindness, asking, "Have any of the rulers believed in him?" But one among them, Nicodemus, who had previously visited Jesus at night, challenged them to judge rightly, not by hearsay, but by truth. And they, in their pride, dismissed both Jesus and the region he came from, missing entirely the Messiah who stood in their midst. James 5. Now listen, you who are rich, who have hoarded wealth while others suffered, for the time has come for you to weep and wail, for the misery that is approaching will not spare you. Your riches are rotting, your fine clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will rise up to testify against you, like fire consuming flesh, because you stored up treasures in the last days without justice or compassion. The cries of the laborers you defrauded, those whose wages you held back, have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. And while you lived in luxury and self-indulgence, fattening yourselves in the day of slaughter, you condemned and murdered the innocent, those who offered no resistance. Therefore, brothers and sisters, be patient as you wait for the Lord's coming, just as the farmer waits for the land to yield its crop, depending on the early and late rains. You too must be patient and strengthen your hearts, because the Lord is near, standing at the door. Do not grumble against each other, lest you be judged, and remember the prophets who spoke in God's name, how they endured suffering with unwavering faith. Indeed, we consider blessed those who remain steadfast, like Job, who suffered long and still saw the Lord's compassion and mercy in the end. Above all, let your words be truthful. Do not swear by heaven or earth or anything else, but let your yes be yes, and your no be no, so that you may not fall into condemnation. Is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone joyful? Let them sing songs of praise. Is anyone sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord, and the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. And if they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Confess your sins to one another and pray for each other so that you may be healed. For the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective, just like Elijah, who was human like us, and yet prayed that it would not rain. And it did not for 3.5 years. And then he prayed again, and the skies poured out rain, and the earth produced its crops. So if any among you wanders from the truth, and someone brings them back, know this: whoever turns a sinner from their path will save a soul from death and cover a multitude of sins. Isaiah 30. Ah, rebellious children, says the Lord, children who make plans that are not mine, who form alliances but not by my spirit, who pile one decision on top of another without seeking my voice. And so they go down to Egypt, not to find me, but to take refuge in Pharaoh's power, to seek shelter in the shade of another kingdom. Yet the very thing they trust in will bring them shame, and the protection they hoped for will only disgrace them, for Egypt's promises are empty, its strength a boast without substance. These people carry messages on the backs of donkeys and camels across deserts of trouble and distress, to a nation that cannot help them, to leaders whose aid is worthless and who bring nothing but exhaustion, because they are a people who refuse to listen to God's instruction. They say to the seers, "Stop seeing," and to the prophets, "Don't tell us what is true. Speak smooth things. Tell us illusions," because they cannot bear to be corrected, and they want to push away the Holy One of Israel. Because of this refusal to hear, the Lord says the iniquity they've built will crack and shatter like a tall wall that bulges and breaks in a single moment, collapsing so thoroughly that not even a fragment is left to carry a coal from the fire or scoop water from a well. And yet, even in the midst of this judgment, God speaks, and his voice is filled with mercy, saying, "In returning and rest, you will find your salvation. In quietness and trust will be your strength." But they would not listen. Instead they said, "We will flee on swift horses," and flee they shall. But their pursuers will be even swifter, and 1,000 will scatter at the threat of one. And all that will remain is a solitary flagstaff on a hilltop, a single banner on a mountain. Yet still the Lord waits, not to punish, but to show compassion, for he is a God of justice and mercy, and blessed are all who wait for him. O people of Zion, though you have wept and wandered, you will not cry forever, for the Lord will rise to show you tenderness. At the sound of your cry he will answer. And though he allowed you to taste hardship like bread and drink tears like water, your eyes will see your teacher again, and your ears will hear his voice whispering, "This is the way, walk in it," whenever you turn to the left or to the right. Then you will throw away your idols like something filthy and say, "Get out of my sight," and the Lord will send rain for your crops, and your fields will overflow with grain, and your livestock will graze in wide, rich pastures, and on every high mountain streams of water will flow when he heals the brokenness of his people. He will come with fire and thunder, with wind and earthquake, and his breath will scatter the nations that oppose him. And you, his people, will sing as on the night of a sacred festival, your hearts lifted as you march with music toward the mountain of the Lord, to the rock of Israel, for he is not finished with you, and he waits to be gracious. Isaiah 60. Arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord now rises upon you, even though darkness still covers the earth, and thick shadows weigh down the nations. Yet over you the Lord will rise, and his presence will be visible like the morning sun, drawing people from far and wide. Nations will walk in your light, and kings will be drawn to the brightness of your dawn. Lift your eyes and look all around. Your sons and daughters are returning, coming from distant lands, gathered like treasures carried home. And your heart will swell with joy and wonder, as the wealth of the seas and the gifts of nations pour into your hands. Herds from Midian, camels from Sheba, bearing gold and incense, proclaiming the praise of the Lord. The people you once called foreign will build up your walls, and kings will serve you, not because of your might, but because in my favor I have had compassion on you. And your gates will stay open day and night to receive the constant stream of blessing, while the glory of Lebanon, the finest of trees and materials, will be brought to you to adorn my sanctuary. Though you were once despised and deserted, I will make you majestic forever, a joy to all generations, and instead of bronze, I will bring gold, instead of iron, silver, and I will make peace your governor and righteousness your ruler. No longer will violence be heard within your borders, nor destruction at your gates, for you will call your walls salvation, and your gates praise, and the sun will no longer be your light by day, nor the moon your brightness by night. For the Lord himself will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. Your days of sorrow will end. Your people will be righteous and secure, and you, once small and struggling, will become strong and many, because I, the Lord, will bring this to pass swiftly. In its time I will do it. Jeremiah 33. The word of the Lord came once again to Jeremiah while he was still locked away in the courtyard of the guard. And though the city was under siege and the walls seemed to whisper defeat, God spoke with certainty, saying, "Call to me, and I will answer, and I will show you great and unsearchable things you do not yet know." Yes, the houses of Jerusalem and the palaces of Judah have been torn down to fight against the enemy, and the streets are filled with the dead, victims of sword, plague, and famine. Yet I will bring health and healing. I will bandage every wound, and I will let them enjoy peace and security again. I will restore Judah and Israel and cleanse them from all their sins, and I will forgive all the rebellion they have committed against me. And this city, which now lies broken and feared, will become a name of joy and praise and honor before all nations, who will tremble at the goodness and peace I will pour out. Once again, in this place that seems lifeless and ruined, you will hear sounds of joy, the laughter of bride and groom, the songs of worship rising from the temple, voices saying, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his love endures forever, because I will restore the fortunes of the land as they were before. In the towns of the hill country and the lowlands, in the cities of Judah and the villages of Benjamin, shepherds will once again rest their flocks, and the land will live again. For the days are coming when I will fulfill the promise I made. A righteous branch will sprout from David's line, and he will do what is just and right. In those days Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will live in safety, and this is the name she will be called, the Lord, our righteous Savior. And I tell you, as surely as day follows night, and the heavens cannot be measured, nor the foundations of the earth searched out, so my covenant with David will not be broken, and my mercy to my people will not be removed, for I will rebuild them and plant them, and I will not turn away from doing them good, and I will rejoice in them with all my heart and soul. Psalm 27. The Lord is my light in the darkness, my rescue when danger presses in, the fortress I run to when everything else feels like it is falling apart. And because of that, I refuse to let fear rule over me. For even when the shadows grow long and my enemies seem near, I know I am not alone. And though an army might surround me or war rises against me, still I will be calm, still I will stand. There is just one thing I deeply desire, one single hope that outweighs all others, and that is to live in the nearness of God all the days of my life, to sit quietly in the shelter of His presence, to gaze upon His beauty without distraction, and to seek His heart when the noise of the world becomes too much to bear. In the moments when trouble swirls around me like a storm, I trust that He will hide me in His sacred place, setting me upon a high rock where I cannot be reached by the chaos below. And because of this, I will not cower. I will lift my head with confidence above my enemies, and I will pour out songs of worship and sacrifice my fear at His altar. I cry out to Him, "Hear me, Lord, do not turn away." My heart says, "Seek Him." And so I seek You with everything I am, asking You not to hide Your face, not to leave me when I am most in need. For You, Lord, have always been my help, and I cannot walk a single step without You. Even if my own mother and father were to abandon me, even if those closest to me forgot me, still You would take me in with compassion. So teach me how to live in a way that pleases You. Lead me along a steady path, for there are those who would like to see me fall. Do not let their lies overcome me. Do not let violence have the final word, for I am holding on to this quiet confidence, this unshakable hope, that I will see Your goodness not just someday far away, but here, in the land of the living. So I will wait for You, Lord, not passively, not impatiently, but with strength in my bones and courage in my soul, and I will wait again and again until You move. Psalm 37. Do not waste your peace by fretting over those who seem to do wrong without consequence. Do not let jealousy rise when others succeed through evil schemes. For like spring grass that looks green and lush today, they will soon fade and be gone without a trace. Instead, root yourself in the faithfulness of God. Trust in Him with quiet confidence. Do what is good. Plant your life in His soil and feed on the security of His promises. For when you delight in Him more than anything else, He reshapes your heart so that its desires match His own, and He will bring those hopes to life in His perfect timing. Commit every detail of your life to the Lord, the large steps and the small ones, and trust that He will act. For He will make your innocence shine like sunlight, and your righteousness will be as clear as the noonday sky. Be still before Him, not in frustration, but in deep surrender, and wait patiently, without comparing yourself to those who chase success through deception, for anger and rage will only poison your heart, while those who hope in the Lord will inherit peace and a future that cannot be stolen. Though it may seem like the wicked are rising and the righteous are left behind, do not be deceived, for in a moment those who oppress will vanish, while the humble, the gentle, and those who walk closely with God will quietly inherit the earth and know a peace that lasts. The wicked may plot and snarl, but the Lord laughs, for He sees that their time is short and their strength will crumble, while the steps of the righteous are watched over by God Himself. And even when they stumble, they are not destroyed, for His hand holds them up. I was young once, and now I have grown old. But through all the seasons I have never seen the righteous completely abandoned, never seen their children begging for bread. For those who walk with God are generous without fear, and they and their families will be blessed. Turn your back on evil and walk toward good, for when you do, you walk toward a place of permanence, a home rooted in eternity, because the Lord loves justice, and He never forsakes those who belong to Him. Keep your eyes on the faithful ones, for their future is peace, and though the wicked may rise like a storm, they will pass like a shadow at dusk, while the salvation of the righteous, your salvation, will come not from your own strength, but from the Lord, who is your refuge in the hardest hour, your deliverer in times of distress, your safe place in the battle, and the one who rescues you simply because you belong to him. Psalm 130. From the deepest part of my sorrow, from a place no light touches, I cry to you, O Lord, not with polished words, but with the raw ache of one who knows they have no hope apart from mercy. Please hear me, not just with ears, but with compassion, with attention. Listen to the trembling voice of my soul, as it pleads for forgiveness, because if you were to count every sin, if you were to mark down every failure, every selfish moment, every bitter thought, who among us could stand in your presence? But with you, Lord, there is forgiveness, a forgiveness so deep that it silences fear and births reverence, so complete that it teaches the soul how to worship. So I wait, not impatiently, but with a longing stretched wide across every hour. I wait for you, Lord, with a hope not built on outcomes, but on your word. For in that word is truth, and in that truth is life. More than the night guards who pace back and forth through the hours of darkness, longing for the break of dawn, more than them, my soul waits for you, because I know that you are coming. O Israel, O weary people, put your hope not in your efforts or your record or your strength, but in the Lord. For with him there is love that never runs dry, and redemption that has no limit. And he himself will gather us from the ruins of our sin and make us whole again. Nehemiah 1. In the month of Kislev, during the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, Nehemiah was in the citadel of Susa. He was serving in the palace when his brother Hanani arrived with some men from Judah. Nehemiah asked them about the Jewish remnant who had survived exile and about Jerusalem. The news they brought broke his heart. The people are in great trouble and disgrace, they said. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When Nehemiah heard these words, he sat down and wept. For days he mourned, fasted, and prayed before the God of heaven. He cried out, O Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and obey his commands, hear my prayer. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's house, have committed against you. We have acted wickedly toward you. We have not obeyed your commands. He remembered God's promise, how, even in exile, if his people turned back to him with all their hearts, he would gather them again from the ends of the earth. These are your servants, Nehemiah said, your people, whom you redeemed by your great strength and mighty hand. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and those who delight in revering your name. Then he prayed for one thing more. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king, a man in a royal position, ready to be used by God for a sacred mission. Esther 4. Word spread like wildfire through the palace gates. A decree had gone out across the empire. Every Jew, young and old, man and woman, would be destroyed on a set day. Mourning swept across the land. When Mordecai heard the news, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and cried loudly in the city streets. He stood outside the king's gate in mourning, for no one in sackcloth was allowed to enter. In every province, wherever the decree was read, the Jews fasted, wept, and wailed. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Inside the palace, Esther's attendants told her about Mordecai. Distressed, she sent fresh clothes to him, but he refused to wear them. She sent Hathach, a trusted servant, to find out what was wrong. Mordecai sent word through Hathach, explaining the edict, and how Haman had promised silver to the king's treasury to destroy the Jews. He even gave Esther a copy of the written decree and urged her to go before the king, to plead for her people. But Esther sent back a sobering reply. Everyone knows that if anyone approaches the king without being summoned, man or woman, they will be put to death unless the king extends his gold scepter. I have not been called to him for 30 days. Then Mordecai sent a powerful message, one that would echo through time. Do not think that because you are in the palace, you will escape. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther sent her reply, Go, gather all the Jews in Susa. Fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as well. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. And so the fate of a people hung in the balance, and one woman chose courage over comfort, purpose over fear. Job 14. In his pain, Job spoke again, his voice heavy with the weight of suffering and the deep questions of a man searching for hope. Man, born of woman, is of few days and full of trouble. Like a flower, he springs up and withers. Like a fleeting shadow, he does not endure. You watch us closely, God, and bring us into judgment. But who can bring what is pure from the impure? No one. Job felt the limits of life pressing in. A person's days are determined. You have set the number of his months. You've marked the boundaries he cannot cross. So turn your gaze from him, Lord, and let him be, so he may find rest, like a hired laborer at the end of the day. Then he wondered about hope, the kind of hope that survives even in loss. There is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again. Its roots may grow old in the ground, and its stump may die in the soil. Yet at the scent of water, it will bud and put forth shoots like a plant. But a man dies and is laid low. He breathes his last, and where is he? He lies down and does not rise. Till the heavens are no more, people will not awake or be roused from their sleep. Job's longing poured out in a whisper. If only you would hide me in the grave and conceal me till your anger has passed. If only you would set a time and remember me. He asked, if someone dies, will they live again? All the days of my hard service, I will wait for my renewal to come. You will call, and I will answer. But even in this flicker of hope, Job returned to sorrow. You count every step I take, but you also keep track of my sins. My offenses are sealed in a bag. My wrongdoing is tied up tightly. Even mountains erode and rocks are worn down by water. Hope fades like stones dislodged over time. You overpower us, and we are gone. Our faces change, we pass away. A man may die, and his children may rise to honor or fall to shame, but he no longer knows. And Job ended with this aching thought. He only feels the pain of his own body, and mourns only for himself. 1 Chronicles 10. On the battlefield at Mount Gilboa, the army of Israel was collapsing beneath the weight of the Philistine assault. The fighting was fierce and merciless, and one by one Saul's sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, fell in battle. The tide had turned against Israel. As the enemy pressed in, Saul was wounded by archers. Mortally injured and seeing no escape, he turned to his armor-bearer and pleaded, "Draw your sword and run me through so these uncircumcised men won't come and abuse me." But the armor-bearer was too afraid. So Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. When the armor-bearer saw his king was dead, he too fell on his sword and died beside him. Thus Saul died, and so did his sons and his dynasty. All his house perished together that day, and the army of Israel fled. Their towns were abandoned, their walls silent. The Philistines moved in, occupying the fallen strongholds. The next day, the enemy came to strip the dead, and they found Saul and his sons lying lifeless on the mountain. They cut off Saul's head, took his armor, and spread the news throughout Philistine lands, celebrating their triumph in temples of false gods. They placed his armor in the temple of their idols and fastened his skull in the temple of Dagon. But the people of Jabesh Gilead heard what had been done to Saul, and with courage and loyalty they retrieved his body and those of his sons, buried them under a great tree, and mourned them with fasting for 7 days. Saul died because he was unfaithful to the Lord. He did not keep the word of the Lord, and even consulted a medium for guidance instead of seeking God. Because of this, the Lord put him to death and turned the kingdom over to David, son of Jesse, a man after his own heart. 2 Chronicles 15. The Spirit of God came upon Azariah, son of Oded, and he went out to meet King Asa with a word that pierced the heart of a nation. He said, "Listen to me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you." For a long time, Israel was without the true God, without a priest to teach, and without the law. But in their distress, they turned to the Lord, and he was found. He warned them of a time when nation would clash with nation, city with city, and there would be great turmoil, because God had troubled them with every kind of distress. "But as for you," he said, "be strong and do not give up, for your work will be rewarded." These words stirred Asa deeply. He summoned courage and removed the detestable idols from all the land of Judah and Benjamin, and from the towns he had captured in Ephraim's hill country. He repaired the altar of the Lord in front of the temple. Then he gathered the people, all Judah and Benjamin, and even many from Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, who had joined him because they saw that the Lord was with him. Together they assembled in Jerusalem in the 3rd month of Asa's 15th year. They sacrificed to the Lord from the plunder they had taken, 700 cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats. And then they entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, with all their heart and soul. They made this vow with a loud voice, with shouting, with trumpets and ram's horns. All rejoiced, because they had sworn with all their heart, and God was found by them, and he gave them rest on every side. Even when Asa's own grandmother, Maacah, held to an idolatrous image, he removed her from her position as queen mother and cut down the repulsive idol she had made. Though the high places were not all removed, Asa's heart was fully committed to the Lord all his life. He brought the silver and gold and sacred articles into the temple, and there was peace, lasting peace, throughout the reign of a king who sought the Lord. Ezra 10th. While Ezra prayed, weeping and lying face down before the house of God, a large crowd gathered around him, men, women, and children of Israel, and all were weeping bitterly. One of them, Shechaniah son of Jehiel, stood up and spoke. "We have been unfaithful to our God by marrying foreign women from the peoples around us. But in spite of this, there is still hope for Israel. Let us now make a covenant before our God to send away these wives and their children, in accordance with the law. Rise up, Ezra. This matter is in your hands. We are with you." Ezra stood, trembling with purpose. He made the leading priests, Levites, and all Israel take an oath to do as had been said, and they took the oath. Then Ezra withdrew to the room of Jehohanan, where he fasted, refusing food and water, mourning over the unfaithfulness of the exiles. A proclamation was sent throughout Judah and Jerusalem, summoning all the returned exiles to gather within 3 days or face exclusion from the community. On the 20th day of the 9th month, they came and sat in the square before the house of God, trembling, not just from the cold rain, but from the weight of guilt. Ezra stood before them. "You have been unfaithful. You have married foreign women, adding to Israel's guilt. Now confess to the Lord, the God of your ancestors, and do his will. Separate yourselves from these foreign wives." The people answered in one voice, "You are right. We must do as you say." But it was winter, and the matter was complex, so officials were appointed to investigate, and over the course of 3 months, they examined each case carefully. At the end of the matter, the names of those who had been unfaithful were recorded, priests, Levites, and others. And they pledged to put away the foreign wives and offer a guilt offering. And so, in weeping and repentance, Israel was being purified, not just from foreign influence, but from the sin of the heart that had crept in while they were rebuilding their nation. What had begun as brokenness became a step toward holiness. 1 Kings 17. In the days when the land was dry with sin and the hearts of kings were turned from God, the Lord raised up a prophet from Tishbe in Gilead. His name was Elijah, and he stood boldly before King Ahab and declared, "As surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, the one I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the land these years, except at my word." And just like that, the heavens were sealed. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. "Leave this place. Go eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. There you will drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you." So Elijah obeyed the Lord's voice. He went to the ravine and lived there, drinking from the brook. And morning and evening the ravens brought him bread and meat, food from the sky, provision in the wilderness. But after a while, the brook dried up because the land had no rain. Then the Lord spoke again. "Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food." When Elijah arrived at the gate of Zarephath, he saw a widow gathering sticks. He called to her and said, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink?" And as she went, he added, "And please, bring me a piece of bread." The woman stopped and looked at him. "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she said, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering sticks to take home and make a last meal for myself and my son, so that we may eat it and die." But Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you've said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me. Then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." And the woman believed. She went and did as Elijah had instructed, and each day there was food, not just for Elijah, but for the woman and her household. The jar of flour was never empty, the jug of oil never failed. God's promise stood firm through famine. But then tragedy struck. The woman's son grew ill, so ill that he stopped breathing. She cried out to Elijah in anguish, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" Elijah took the boy from her arms, carried him upstairs to the room where he was staying, and laid him on the bed. He cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, have you brought tragedy on this widow by taking her son?" Then he stretched himself out over the boy 3 times and prayed, "O Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." the Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned, and he lived. Elijah carried the boy down and gave him back to his mother. "Look," he said, "your son is alive." And the woman said, with awe in her voice, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." 2 Kings 4. Elisha, the prophet who carried the mantle of Elijah, continued to walk in the power of God, and many miracles followed him. One day, a widow of a prophet came to him, crying out in desperation, "My husband, your servant, is dead, and now the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons as slaves." Elisha asked her gently, "What do you have in your house?" "Nothing," she replied, "except a small jar of olive oil." And Elisha gave her a strange but powerful command. "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars, as many as you can. Then go inside with your sons, shut the door, and pour oil into all the jars. As each is filled, set it aside." So she obeyed. Her sons brought her jar after jar, and she poured and poured and poured. Every vessel was filled with oil. Only when the last jar was full did the oil stop flowing. She ran to Elisha and told him. He said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." Not long after, Elisha would pass through the town of Shunem, where a wealthy woman invited him to eat. She noticed he was a holy man and said to her husband, "Let's build a small room for him on the roof, a place with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp, so he can stay with us whenever he passes by." One day, as Elisha rested in the room, he asked his servant Gehazi, "What can we do for her?" Gehazi said, "She has no son, and her husband is old." So Elisha called her and spoke a promise. "About this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms." She trembled. "No, my lord," she said, "don't mislead your servant." But just as the prophet had said, a year later, she gave birth to a son. The boy grew. One day, while in the fields with his father, he cried out, "My head, my head!" He was carried home, sat on his mother's lap until noon, and then died. Heartbroken but full of faith, the woman laid him on Elisha's bed, shut the door, and went to find the prophet. When she reached him at Mount Carmel, she fell at his feet and said, "Did I ask for a son? Didn't I say, 'Don't raise my hopes'?" Elisha sent Gehazi ahead with his staff, but the child did not wake. Then Elisha arrived. He went into the room, shut the door, and prayed to the Lord. He lay on the child, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands, and the boy's body grew warm. Elisha walked back and forth, then bent over him again. Suddenly the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha called the mother. "Take your son," he said. She fell at his feet in gratitude, then took her child and walked out, carrying a miracle in her arms. Later, Elisha returned to Gilgal, where there was a famine. A servant made stew, but unknowingly added wild gourds that were poisonous. The men cried, "There is death in the pot." But Elisha added flour, and the stew became safe to eat. And when a man brought him 20 loaves of barley and fresh grain, Elisha said, "Give it to the people to eat." His servant objected, "How can I set this before 100 men?" But Elisha said, "Give it to the people. The Lord says, they will eat and have some left over." And so it happened. They ate, and still there was more. 1 Samuel 13. Saul had ruled Israel for some time and chose a small force of 3,000 men to remain with him while the rest of the army was sent back to their homes. 2,000 stayed with him at Michmash and Bethel's highlands, and 1,000 were stationed with his son Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. It was Jonathan who struck the Philistine outpost at Geba, and the word of the attack quickly reached the Philistine strongholds. Saul had the trumpet sounded throughout the land to rally Israel, declaring that war with the Philistines was now inevitable. The people of Israel gathered at Gilgal, but they were afraid, for the Philistines were stirring. And the Philistines responded with overwhelming force, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and troops that seemed as countless as the sand along the shore. They came and encamped at Michmash, pressing east toward Israel's heartland. Seeing the enemy's strength, the Israelites were gripped by terror. They fled into caves and clefts, into the rocks and pits, hiding wherever they could. Some even crossed the Jordan to the distant lands of Gad and Gilead, seeking safety. But Saul remained in Gilgal, where he had been instructed by the prophet Samuel to wait 7 days. The days passed slowly, and as the week neared its end, the people began to slip away, scattering in fear and doubt. The weight of uncertainty pressed hard on Saul's shoulders. And on the 7th day, with no sign of Samuel and his army dwindling, Saul took matters into his own hands. He said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings." And he made the sacrifice himself, a decision born not out of obedience but of desperation. As the final smoke rose from the altar, Samuel appeared. Saul went to greet him, but Samuel's voice was sharp. "What have you done?" Saul answered, "When I saw that the people were scattering, and that you had not come at the appointed time, and that the Philistines were gathering at Michmash, I thought, now they will come down upon me, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering." Samuel's response was solemn and heavy. "You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. Had you obeyed, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now, your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler over his people, because you did not obey." Then Samuel departed, leaving Saul alone with his dwindling army. Only 600 men remained. The weight of disobedience now rested upon Saul's reign like a shadow, and the Lord had begun to search for another, a man whose heart beat in rhythm with God's own. 1 Samuel 26. Once again the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah with whispers of betrayal, saying, "David is hiding on the hill of Hachilah, across from the desert." And Saul, though he had once sworn not to harm David, was stirred again by jealousy and fear. He rose with 3,000 of Israel's elite and went in pursuit, descending into the wilderness of Ziph. David, who had eyes and ears in many places, learned of Saul's approach and sent scouts to confirm his location. One night he rose and crept toward Saul's camp. From a distance, he saw Saul lying within the protective circle of the army, his spear stuck in the ground beside his head, with Abner, the commander of his guard, sleeping nearby. David turned to 2 of his men, Ahimelech the Hittite and Abishai, Joab's brother. "Who will go down with me into the camp to Saul?" Abishai replied, "I will go with you." So under the cover of darkness, the 2 men descended into the heart of Saul's camp. They moved silently, step by step, until they stood at the very place where Saul lay sleeping, his spear beside him, and Abner unaware. The Lord had caused a deep sleep to fall upon the entire camp. Abishai whispered, "Today God has delivered your enemy into your hands. Let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of his spear. I won't need to strike him twice." But David held him back, his voice low and steady. "Do not destroy him. Who can lift a hand against the Lord's anointed and remain guiltless? As surely as the Lord lives, either his time will come and he will die, or he will fall in battle. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on him. Take the spear and the water jug near his head, and let's go." So they took Saul's spear and his jug of water, and slipped away unnoticed. No one stirred, no one saw, no one awakened, for the Lord had wrapped the camp in sleep. Once they were a safe distance away, David climbed to the top of a nearby hill and called out to the army, to Abner himself, "Abner, are you not going to answer me?" Abner awoke and replied, "Who are you that calls to the king?" David said, "Aren't you a man? Who is like you in all Israel? Why did you not guard your master, the Lord's anointed? Someone came to destroy him. What you have done is not good. As surely as the Lord lives, you and your men deserve to die for failing to protect your king. Look around. Where is the king's spear and the water jug that were beside his head?" Then Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And David replied, "Yes, my lord the king. Why is your servant being hunted? What have I done? What is my crime? Let the king listen to my words. If the Lord has stirred you against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is men who have done this, may they be cursed. They have driven me away, as if I do not belong among the people of the Lord. Am I to die in exile like a flea pursued on a mountain?" Saul's heart softened for a moment. He said, "I have sinned. Come back, David. I will not try to harm you again, because my life was precious in your eyes today. Surely I have acted like a fool and have been terribly wrong." David answered, "Here is your spear, O king. Let one of your men come and get it. The Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness. The Lord delivered you into my hands today, but I would not lay a hand on his anointed. Just as your life was valuable in my eyes today, so may my life be valuable in the eyes of the Lord, and may he deliver me from all trouble." Then Saul said to David, "May you be blessed, David, my son. You will do great things and surely triumph." And David went on his way, while Saul returned home, his spear in hand, his power slipping, and the future in the hands of another. Ruth 2. Naomi and Ruth had returned to Bethlehem, two widows clinging to hope in the midst of loss. Among Naomi's late husband's relatives was a man of standing, a worthy and influential figure from the clan of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. As the barley harvest began, Ruth said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi replied gently, "Go ahead, my daughter." So Ruth went out and began to glean in the fields, gathering what the harvesters left behind, and by what seemed chance but was really providence, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz. Then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem. He greeted the harvesters with blessing, saying, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." As he looked across the field, Boaz noticed the young woman gleaning behind the workers. He asked the overseer, "Who is that young woman?" The overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who returned with Naomi. She asked to glean among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She has been working steadily from morning until now, with only a short rest." Boaz approached Ruth with kindness. "Listen, my daughter," he said. "Don't go and glean in another field. Stay here, with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along. I've told the men not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you are thirsty, help yourself to the water jars." Ruth bowed low and asked, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me? A foreigner?" Boaz answered, I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law, how you left your homeland and family to come here, to a people you did not know. May the Lord repay you for what you've done. May you be richly rewarded by the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." With humility, Ruth replied, "May I continue to find favor in your eyes. You have comforted me and spoken kindly, though I am not even one of your servants." At mealtime, Boaz invited her to eat with his workers. He offered her roasted grain and shared his bread. She ate until she was satisfied and even had some left over. Afterward, when she returned to the field, Boaz gave instructions to his men. "Let her glean even among the sheaves. Don't reprimand her. Leave behind some stalks for her to gather." So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. She threshed the barley she had collected, nearly an ephah, a generous amount, and carried it back to town. Naomi saw all that Ruth had gathered, and when Ruth gave her the leftover food from her meal, Naomi asked, "Where did you glean today? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Ruth told her, "The name of the man I worked with is Boaz." Naomi's heart stirred with renewed hope. "The Lord bless him," she exclaimed. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." She added, "That man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers." Ruth said, "He even told me to stay with his workers until they finish the harvest." Naomi replied, "That is good, my daughter. Stay with the women in his field. In someone else's field, you might be harmed." So Ruth stayed close to Boaz's female workers through the barley and wheat harvests, and she continued to live with Naomi. 1 Samuel 13. Saul had reigned over Israel for some time, and he chose 3,000 men for his standing army. 2,000 stayed with him at Michmash and in the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan, his son, at Gibeah in Benjamin. The rest of the troops were sent home. Jonathan attacked a Philistine outpost at Geba, and word spread quickly. The Philistines heard of it, and Saul had the trumpet blown throughout the land, "Let all the Hebrews hear." So all Israel heard the news. Saul had struck the Philistines and now had become a stench to them. The people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. But the Philistines were not idle. In response, they mustered a vast force, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and soldiers as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They came up and camped at Michmash, east of Beth-aven. Seeing this great host, the Israelites were afraid. Panic spread. The people hid in caves, thickets, among the rocks, in pits and cisterns. Some even fled across the Jordan to Gad and Gilead. But Saul remained in Gilgal, and the people with him were trembling. He waited 7 days, the time set by the prophet Samuel. But Samuel did not come, and the soldiers began to scatter. Fear and impatience filled Saul's heart. So he said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings." And he offered the sacrifice himself, something only a priest or prophet was to do. Just as he finished making the offering, Samuel arrived. Saul went out to greet him, but Samuel's face was grave. "What have you done?" he asked. Saul replied, "When I saw that the men were scattering, and you did not come at the appointed time, and that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." "You have done a foolish thing," Samuel said. "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." Then Samuel left Gilgal and went up to Gibeah. Saul counted the men who remained with him, about 600. They were vastly outnumbered, and they moved from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin. Meanwhile, the Philistines sent out raiding parties in 3 directions, terrorizing the region. At that time, no blacksmith could be found in all Israel, for the Philistines had forbidden them, saying, "Otherwise the Hebrews will make swords or spears." So the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen their plows, axes, and sickles, paying high prices just to keep their tools useful. On the day of battle, not a sword or spear was found in the hands of any of Saul's soldiers. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had weapons. And as the enemy drew near, the Philistine outpost advanced to the pass at Michmash. The storm of war was about to break. Joshua 6. Jericho was tightly shut up. No one went out and no one came in. The fear of Israel and the power of their God had closed its gates and hearts. But the Lord spoke to Joshua with confidence and clarity, saying, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its warriors. This is how you will take the city." The Lord gave Joshua strange and sacred instructions, not of swords and siege engines, but of silence and submission. For 6 days the armed men were to march around the city once each day, circling its mighty walls, accompanied by 7 priests carrying ram's horns before the ark of the Lord. And on the 7th day they were to march around the city 7 times, and the priests were to blow their trumpets. "And when you hear the long blast," the Lord said, "have all the people give a loud shout. Then the walls of the city will collapse, and the people shall go straight in." Joshua summoned the priests and the warriors and relayed every word the Lord had said. The Ark of the Covenant was carried in the procession, and the warriors marched ahead and behind it. The priests blew their trumpets continually, but Joshua commanded the people, "Do not give a war cry. Do not raise your voices or say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout." So they marched, silently circling the city with the ark of the Lord in their midst, and the sound of trumpets echoing softly in the air. On the first day they returned to their camp and rested. This they did for 6 days. Then on the 7th day they rose at daybreak. They marched around the city, not once, but 7 times, as the Lord had commanded. The trumpets blew, and the hearts of the people pounded. At the end of the 7th circuit, the priests gave a long, piercing blast, and Joshua cried out, "Shout! For the Lord has given you the city. Everything in it is devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and her family shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent." And then, with one voice, the people shouted. The sound was like thunder, and the walls of Jericho trembled. Then, suddenly, the mighty walls that had stood tall for generations crumbled into the earth. The people surged forward and captured the city. They destroyed everything within, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys, as the Lord had commanded. Joshua sent the 2 spies to rescue Rahab and all who were with her. They brought her out safely and placed her outside the camp of Israel. Then they burned the city and everything in it. But the silver, gold, and vessels of bronze and iron were placed in the treasury of the Lord's house. Rahab and her family were spared and lived among the Israelites from that day forward. And Joshua pronounced a solemn curse. "Cursed before the Lord is the one who tries to rebuild this city. At the cost of his firstborn will he lay its foundation, and at the cost of his youngest will he set up its gates." So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. Judges 6. Again the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord, And once more the Lord gave them into the hands of an oppressor, this time the Midianites, for 7 long and bitter years. The Midianites were ruthless, and the Israelites fled to the mountains, hiding in caves and strongholds, fearing for their lives. Whenever Israel planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples swarmed in like locusts, ravaging the land. They camped on the fields, ruined the harvest, and left nothing for Israel to live on. No sheep, no cattle, not even donkeys. They came in like a storm, their tents and camels without number, devouring everything in their path. In their anguish, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and God sent a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the Egyptians and delivered you from all your oppressors. I gave you this land, but you have not listened to me." Then one day, the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the great oak tree in Ophrah, where a young man named Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress, hiding from the Midianites, trying to preserve what little he could. The angel appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon, weary and doubtful, replied, "If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened? Where are all his wonders our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" But Gideon replied, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." And the Lord said, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites as if they were but one man." Still unsure, Gideon asked for a sign. "Please do not go away until I bring my offering and set it before you." He hurried home, prepared a young goat and unleavened bread, and brought it back. The angel told him to place the meat and bread on a rock and pour out the broth. Then the angel touched it with the tip of his staff, and fire flared from the rock, consuming the offering. And then the angel vanished. Gideon realized who he had seen and cried out in fear, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord reassured him, "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." So Gideon built an altar there and called it, "The Lord is Peace." That very night, the Lord gave him a command. He was to tear down his father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Then, using the wood from the pole, he was to build a proper altar to the Lord and sacrifice one of his father's bulls. Gideon obeyed, but did it at night, afraid of his family and the townspeople. In the morning, the town awoke to find Baal's altar destroyed, the Asherah pole cut down, and a new altar standing in its place. They demanded to know who had done it. When they discovered it was Gideon, they cried out for his death. But Gideon's father, Joash, stood up and said, "If Baal really is a god, let him defend himself." From that day forward, Gideon was called Jerub-Baal, meaning, "Let Baal contend with him." Meanwhile, the Midianites and their allies gathered to make war. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning his people to follow him. Still, Gideon sought confirmation. He placed a fleece of wool on the ground and said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, let the fleece be wet with dew and the ground dry." And it was so. Yet again he asked, "Let the fleece be dry and the ground wet with dew." And God, patient and gracious, did exactly as Gideon asked. Leviticus 25. On Mount Sinai, the Lord spoke to Moses and gave him sacred instructions for the people of Israel once they had entered the land he was giving them, a land of promise and provision. The Lord declared that even the land itself must observe a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years they were to sow their fields, prune their vineyards, and gather their crops. But in the 7th year the land was to rest, a Sabbath of solemn rest to the Lord. During this 7th year they were not to sow their fields or prune their vineyards, nor reap what grew of itself, or harvest the untended vines. Instead, whatever the land produced during this Sabbath was to be food for them, for the Israelites, their servants, hired workers, guests, livestock, and even the wild animals. Then came a deeper mystery, the year of Jubilee. The Lord told Moses, "Count off 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbaths total 49 years. Then on the 10th day of the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement, sound the trumpet throughout the land. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you." In that year of Jubilee, each person was to return to their own property and family heritage. No one was to sow or reap what grew of itself, or gather the grapes from untended vines. The land was to rest, and the people were to live on what the fields naturally yielded. During this sacred year, land that had been sold was to be returned to its original family, for the land ultimately belonged to the Lord. The people were tenants, so any sale of land was to be based on the number of years remaining until the next Jubilee. The more years remaining, the higher the price; the fewer years, the lower the value. The Lord urged fairness. "Do not take advantage of one another, but fear your God. I am the Lord your God." God promised that if the people obeyed his commands and observed these Sabbaths, they would dwell in safety. The land would yield enough produce even in the 6th year to last through the Sabbath and beyond. God assured them, "I will command my blessing upon you." No land was to be sold permanently, for it belonged to the Lord, and his people were only sojourners with him. If a person became poor and had to sell their land, a close relative could redeem it. If the seller prospered later, they could buy it back themselves. But if neither was possible, the land would return to the family in the Jubilee. If someone sold a house in a walled city, they had 1 year to redeem it. After that, it would belong permanently to the buyer, unless it was a Levite's house in a Levitical town, which could always be redeemed. If a fellow Israelite fell into poverty, they were not to be treated harshly. They were to be helped, supported, and not charged interest or profit. "Fear your God," the Lord said, "so that your brother may live beside you." If one became so poor that they sold themselves into service, they were not to be treated as slaves. They were to be regarded as hired workers, serving until the year of Jubilee, when they would go free and return to their family and ancestral land. For they were the Lord's servants, whom he brought out of Egypt. They were not to be sold as slaves. Finally, the Lord commanded that no Israelite was to rule over another harshly, and if a foreigner among them became rich while an Israelite became poor, the right of redemption still applied. A relative could redeem them, or they could eventually redeem themselves. And if neither could do so, they were to go free in the Jubilee year. For all the children of Israel belonged to the Lord. He had redeemed them from slavery in Egypt. They were his servants, and he was their God. Numbers 14. That night, after hearing the fearful report of the spies, the entire Israelite community raised their voices in weeping. The people grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and their despair became rebellion. "If only we had died in Egypt," they said, "or in this wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us to this land only for us to fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better to go back to Egypt?" They said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and return to Egypt." Moses and Aaron fell face down before the assembly. But Joshua and Caleb, two of the spies who had seen the land and remained faithful, tore their clothes and cried out, "The land we explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Do not rebel against the Lord. Do not be afraid of the people of the land. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid." But the people would not listen. They spoke of stoning them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting before all the people. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, despite all the signs I have done among them? I will strike them with a plague and destroy them. And I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they." But Moses interceded, as he had before. "Lord," he said, "if you destroy them, the Egyptians will hear of it, and so will all the nations who have seen your power. They will say, 'The Lord was not able to bring them into the land He promised, so He killed them in the wilderness.' Now may your strength be displayed just as you declared. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. Yet He does not leave the guilty unpunished. Please forgive the sin of this people, just as you have done from Egypt until now." And the Lord responded, "I have forgiven them, just as you asked. Nevertheless, not one of those who saw my glory and the miracles I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, and still disobeyed me, will see the land I promised to their ancestors. Not one except Caleb and Joshua." Because they had treated the Lord with contempt, none of that generation would enter the promised land. Instead, their children, whom they said would be taken as plunder, would enter in their place. But the adults would wander in the wilderness for 40 years, 1 year for each day the spies had explored the land, until every last one of them had perished. Then the 10 men who had given the bad report and stirred fear among the people were struck down by a plague and died before the Lord. Only Joshua and Caleb were spared. When Moses told these things to the people, they mourned greatly. Early the next morning, some of them rose up and tried to go into the land, saying, "We have sinned, but now we will go up to the land the Lord promised." But Moses warned them, "Do not go. The Lord is not with you. You will be defeated by your enemies. The Amalekites and Canaanites will face you there, and you will fall by the sword." Yet they went anyway presumptuously, without the Ark of the Covenant, and without Moses. And just as Moses had said, the enemies struck them down and chased them away. Exodus 12. In the land of Egypt, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, and marked a turning point in their journey. "This month," he said, "shall be for you the beginning of months. It will be the first month of your year." Then God gave a command that would shape the identity of His people for generations. "Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each family must choose a lamb, one without blemish, a male a year old. If a household is too small for a whole lamb, they may share one with their nearest neighbor. You must care for it until the 14th day of the month, and then at twilight the entire assembly shall slaughter their lambs." And the Lord added something sacred and mysterious. "Take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where you eat the lamb. Roast the meat over a fire. Do not eat it raw or boiled. Eat it with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Do not leave anything until morning. If anything remains, burn it." And the Lord said, "This is how you are to eat it. with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover." Then came the fearful warning, full of both judgment and mercy. "On that night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. But the blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt." The Lord told them, "This day you must commemorate. For the generations to come, you shall celebrate it as a lasting ordinance. For 7 days you are to eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, remove all yeast from your homes. Whoever eats anything with yeast during these days must be cut off from Israel." Moses called all the elders of Israel and instructed them exactly as God had said. They were to take a lamb, slaughter it, dip a bundle of hyssop in the blood, and smear it on their doorframes. "None of you," Moses warned, "shall go out of the door of your house until morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike Egypt. But when he sees the blood on the doorway, he will pass over your home." At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on the throne to the firstborn of the prisoner in the dungeon. A great cry rose across Egypt, one so loud and bitter that there had never been anything like it before. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron during the night. His voice, trembling with fear and sorrow, said, "Go, leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go and worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds, and go, and bless me also." The Egyptians urged the people to hurry, to leave the land before more death came. The Israelites left with unleavened dough on their backs, wrapped in kneading troughs. They had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold and clothing, and the Egyptians gave freely, eager to be rid of them. About 600,000 men, along with women and children, journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth. Their flocks and herds went with them, a massive company of people and animals. They baked unleavened bread because there was no time to let the dough rise. They had been driven out of Egypt and had no provisions prepared. The Lord kept his promise. After 430 years, to the very day, all the divisions of the Lord left Egypt. That night, the Lord kept watch. And so the Israelites were to keep watch through the generations, remembering the Lord who brought them out with a mighty hand. God gave further instructions. No foreigner was to eat the Passover meal unless circumcised. It was to be eaten in one house. None of the meat was to be taken outside or broken apart. And if a foreigner wished to join the community and share in the Passover, he and all the males in his household must be circumcised, and then he could partake as one born in the land. The people of Israel did exactly as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, and on that day the Lord brought them out of Egypt, division by division, into their freedom. Exodus 33. After the terrible sin of the golden calf, the Lord said to Moses, "Leave this place, you and the people you brought out of Egypt, and go to the land I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will send an angel before you and drive out the nations ahead of you. But I will not go with you myself, because you are a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you along the way." When the people heard these words, they were filled with sorrow, and no one wore their ornaments. The Lord had said, "Remove your ornaments so I may decide what to do with you." And from that time on, the Israelites stripped off their ornaments at Mount Horeb. Now Moses used to set up a tent outside the camp called the Tent of Meeting. Whenever anyone wanted to inquire of the Lord, they would go there. When Moses went out to the tent, all the people would stand at the entrances of their own tents and watch until he entered. As Moses entered, The pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance, and the Lord would speak with Moses. And the people, seeing the cloud, would worship, each from their tent. Inside that sacred tent, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend. Then Moses would return to the camp, but his young aide Joshua, son of Nun, did not leave the tent. Moses spoke boldly to the Lord. "You have been telling me to lead these people, but you haven't let me know whom you will send with me. You have said that you know me by name and that I have found favor with you. If this is so, teach me your ways so I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember, this nation is your people." And the Lord replied, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." But Moses said, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know you are pleased with me and your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish us from all the other people on earth?" The Lord answered Moses, "I will do the very thing you have asked because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name." Then Moses made a bold and intimate request. "Now show me your glory." And the Lord said, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But," he added, "you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live." Then the Lord said, "There is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will place you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." Genesis 18. One hot day, as Abraham sat near the entrance of his tent in the heat of the afternoon, he looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He quickly got up and ran to meet them, bowing low to the ground. "If I have found favor in your eyes, my lords," he said, "do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought so you can wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way." The men agreed, and Abraham hurried into the tent. "Quick," he said to Sarah, "get 3 measures of the finest flour, knead it, and bake some bread." He ran to the herd, selected a choice, tender calf, and gave it to a servant who prepared it quickly. Then he brought them curds, milk, and the calf, and served them under the tree as they ate. As they ate, they asked, "Where is your wife Sarah?" "There, in the tent," he replied. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you around this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past childbearing age. So she laughed to herself and thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah, afraid, denied it and said, "I did not laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." When the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children and his household to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just." So the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know." The men turned away and went towards Sodom. But Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous people in the city. Will you really sweep it away and not spare it for their sake? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" The Lord said, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Then Abraham said, "Now that I have been so bold, what if the number is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? The Lord replied, "If I find 45, I will not destroy it." Abraham continued to speak, lowering the number to 40, then 30, then 20. Each time the Lord answered, "I will not do it." Finally, Abraham said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there?" The Lord answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." And when he had finished speaking with Abraham, the Lord departed, and Abraham returned to his tent. Genesis 37. Jacob lived in the land of Canaan, where his father had stayed. This is the story of his son Joseph. At 17 years old, Joseph was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. He brought a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel, also known as Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. To show his love, he made Joseph a richly ornamented robe, a robe of many colors. When his brothers saw that their father loved Joseph more than all of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, their hatred grew. "Listen to this dream I had," he said. "We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you rule us?" And they hated him even more for his dreams and his words. Then he had another dream and told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told this to his father and brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous, but his father kept the matter in mind. One day, when Joseph's brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and the flocks." So Joseph went after them and found them near Dothan. But they saw him coming from a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said. "Let's kill him and throw him into a cistern and say a wild animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." But Reuben, the eldest, heard this and tried to rescue him. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed his blood. Throw him into this cistern in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben planned to come back and rescue Joseph later. So when Joseph arrived, they stripped off his robe, the richly ornamented robe he was wearing, and threw him into the empty cistern. As they sat down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels loaded with spices, balm and myrrh, on their way to Egypt. Judah said, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to these Ishmaelites. After all, he is our brother." And his brothers agreed. So when the traders passed by, they pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 pieces of silver, and the traders took Joseph to Egypt. Later, When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was gone, he tore his clothes in grief. He went back to his brothers and cried, "The boy is gone. What am I to do?" So they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. Then they brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe." Jacob recognized it and cried, "It is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for many days. All his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave," he said. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard.